Welcome, everyone, once again to Camino Conversations. I am Rebecca Weston from the Camino Calls, and I help people 45 and over plan their walks on the Camino de Santiago. And I also lead small group hybrid trips on the Camino, where I walk with you for the first few days, giving you the tools and confidence you need to finish the walk on your own. If you're looking for more inspiration for the Camino, visit thecaminocalls.com. And then each week I try to either bring a guest or answer some questions about the Camino de Santiago. And so today I'm delighted to be joined by Pat Kappes, who's coming to us from Asheville, North Carolina, which happens to be where I am at this moment as well. So even though we are in the same town, we're not physically in the same place at the moment because of how Substack works. It's easier to be in your own home. But Pat initially contacted me to help her plan a Camino that she wanted to do with a couple friends. And she ended up doing that Camino last October. And so I, as I always do with former clients, invited her to come on and share a little bit of some information and tips and all kinds of stuff about her Camino trip. So first of all, Pat, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. And hello to Kristen and Maria who are on live. And if you guys have questions as we're going along, feel free to ask. So, Pat, I always start out by asking, how did you first hear about the Camino de Santiago?
Yeah, I honestly can't remember. I mean, I've just heard about it through the years. I don't think I ever really thought about going on it myself until recently. I had been wanting to plan a trip with a couple friends, and I just love the idea of walking and also exploring like new areas. So that it just kept coming to the surface.
Gotcha. And what
Yeah.
made it go from, this would be a cool trip to take to actually saying, all right, we're going to make this happen?
Yeah. I had two willing partners and they were planning a trip, and so and they were inviting me along, and I suggested the Camino, and fortunately they were game. So it
Okay.
worked out. Yeah.
Awesome. And not everybody that wants to do the Camino with someone can find someone to go with.
Mhm.
So we'll get into going with other people. And I
Mhm.
always also, for anyone listening either now or to this recording later, I always tell people, if you can't find someone to go with, go anyway, because the
Mhm.
Camino is something that is available, especially to women on their own. Did you guys happen to see single women on the trail as well?
Yeah, quite a few. And older women as well.
Mhm.
Um that there was one woman that we were sort of passing her, or she would pass us, over a series of days. So it seemed to be pretty common. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if my friends were not available, I probably would have gone on my own as well.
Great,
Yep.
wonderful. So when we first had our conversation, our first conversation, you at that point were planning to walk from Saria on the Camino
Mhm.
Frances. And for those people that don't know, the Camino de Santiago is actually a network of pilgrimage trails throughout Europe leading to Santiago de Compostela, Spain. So a lot of people initially think there's just one way to do it, and there isn't. But the route, the Camino Frances, is the most popular. And starting from Saria is actually one of the most popular starting points because in order to get your official Compostela at the end, your I did it certificate, you have to walk a minimum of 100 kilometers. And Saria is about 100 kilometers from Santiago de Compostela. However, so first of all, I want to talk about what made you choose that route initially.
Um, well, because it was popular and there were tons of I was looking at suggested itineraries online, and that one came up time and time again. As someone who was new to Camino, I also knew that I definitely wanted to do the minimum 100. I did it certificate type Camino, and so yeah, that one I was leaning toward that. I guess just based on some research I had found online, and
Gotcha.
but that changed after I talked to you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So,
Hmm.
we initially, in our conversation, you were open to different routes, and so I started
Hmm.
asking questions about the Sara route in particular.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you remembered. If you don't, I'll refresh your memory. But do you remember why we were initially deciding Saria might not be the best option?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I initially reached out to you because I couldn't, in my planning, I just couldn't figure out and also coordinating with 2 other people, so we're all flying in from different places and figuring out where do we start, like, what is the town and you can't fly into Sarnia, right? So,
Right.
um, so that was one of the things that triggered my initial conversation with you, but then you gave me the opportunity to talk through, like, what it is that I had in mind, and, while I love walking, I also love, not a lot of elevation gain. And I think when I expressed that, you had suggested the Camino Portuguese.
Mhm.
And then that just seemed like a really great fit because I was also thinking of, okay, I know that I'm going to have the specific itinerary for doing the Camino, but then I would also like to do a little exploration in the general area, region, country, either before or after. And Portugal was someplace that I really wanted to go. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about logistics wise. Where did you guys fly into? Did
Mhm,
you visit someplace in Portugal? And then
mhm.
how did you actually get to your Camino starting point?
Yeah. So we flew into Porto, um, and actually 2 of us flew into Porto and, met and spent a few days there just exploring, and it was amazing. I loved it. I would definitely go back. And so then the day before we were starting our Camino, we took a train to, um, I can't remember the name of the town.
Probably to Camina, the border town
Yes.
with between Spain and
Yes,
Portugal.
because
Yeah.
we were trying to get to Tui, which is on the border of Spain, and that's where our
Mhm.
Camino was starting. And so it was just, you took a train. It was super easy to get that. I think it was maybe a couple hours. And then once you got off, just hopped in a little cab. It took you over the river, and boom, you're in Tui. So that part was really easy.
Yeah.
After I spoke
And
to you, of course, because finding that information, online, those starting points was pretty challenging.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
tell people that part of the Camino journey starts with getting to your starting point. Um,
Mhm.
Most places that people start their Camino are not easy to get to, and so it is something that I work with a lot of my clients on is where are you going to fly into, and how are you
Yeah.
going to get from there to the
Mhm.
starting point, and then on the other side, getting from
Right.
Santiago back. So how did you guys do that? We'll get into your Camino, I promise. But how did you
Yeah,
get
yeah,
from
yeah.
Santiago? Did you do
Well,
a round trip first of all, or where did you go
no.
afterward?
So after, Santiago, and we spent a couple days there, and we all broke off and went our separate ways, but I took a train to Madrid, and flew home from Madrid.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I recall you saying you have a good gate agent story in Madrid.
Yeah, in Madrid, it was, a strange day because, I'm not entirely sure what was happening. We heard that there could have been a strike, and, trains definitely were not on schedule. But anyhow, when I got to Madrid, I was not in the train station that I needed to be to get to the hotel that I had booked. And I was trying to figure out, okay, I guess I transferred to like a subway or another train line to do that. But none of their machines, you can go buy a ticket and, one of the kiosk machines, none of them were working. There was just a spinning dial. And I was not the only one. There was tons of people that were confused, and they did have a customer service desk, which was one poor person who was stuck behind that counter trying to help a long line of people. So when I got up, because I guess that's where you would buy a ticket since none of the machines were working. And when I got up there, this woman was super nice. We did not communicate very well in the same language, but she understood, and she was trying to tell me where I needed to go, and and she was not able to convey it. So she just said, "Come with me," and she literally led me across the entire terminal to the gate that would take me to where I needed to go. There was a ton of people in line behind me, and everybody was, they were just patient and waiting and accepting, and I thought, wow. That's definitely not something that would happen at home. Yeah.
It is quite different. I was, living in Spain at the time when we had the blackout in the entire country, and
Mhm.
I was just stunned that basically everybody just went outside. It was a beautiful day, sat down, had a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, chatted with
Yeah.
each other.
That's
I know
what.
there were some, more emergency kind of situations and things, but I was like, "This would not be working
Yeah.
like this in the US." I mean, people would be looting things or
Oh,
the
yeah.
whole country being at a like,
Mhm.
it was just incredible to see, um, yeah, things operate on a different kind of level there,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
talk to us a little bit because you do actually speak a little bit of Spanish. So
Mhm.
how was that helpful? Did that serve you? What would you recommend for people as far as the language goes?
Yeah. I think it was really helpful, because, of the 3 of us, 2 of us had a basic level of simple stuff, and that was really helpful. I was surprised. I assumed that most people spoke English, which, I think is true for a lot of the bigger cities.
Mhm.
But on the Camino, the small towns that we went to, that was not the case at all,
Yeah.
which was kind of fun. It led to the adventure, but um,
Yeah.
yeah. So then that kind of basic level of Spanish really helped.
Yeah, indeed,
Hmm.
indeed. And there are so many people. I think I've told this story potentially before on one of these interviews, but when my sister arrived in Madrid, I thought Madrid airport, major international hub. I'm sure she can find somebody who speaks English to help her. And she called me like in a panic, like there is no one here who knows English.
Hmm.
And I'm not one to assume that people know English, but I did
Right.
think that in a bigger kind of city
Yeah.
that would be the case, and it is not necessarily true in
Hmm.
Spain,
Hmm.
even in some of the larger cities. So I do
Yeah.
tell people you have to be okay with how are you going to communicate if you can't
Hmm.
communicate in the same language.
Yeah,
So
for sure. I mean, that definitely happened in Madrid at the train
yes,
station. Yep.
yes, indeed. So uh, let's talk. I just want to do one more thing briefly on changing from the Camino Francés to the Camino Portuguese. Overall, how do you feel that that went? Was that a good decision for you guys? Did it work out like you thought it would?
Yeah, it was perfect. I mean, it was just the right route for us. So it
Gotcha.
worked out really well. Mhm.
Good, good. I'm
Yep.
glad that.
Yeah.
And then you guys chose to walk in October.
Mhm.
Was that an intentional choice along with the Camino? Did you already just decide October was it?
Mhm.
And then I also want to know how the weather was in October.
Mhm. So we actually were aiming for September. We wanted to go in a shoulder season because we didn't want to go when it was the most crowded. We didn't want to go when it was super hot. And but just our, stalled planning led to an October date. So we
Yeah,
went mid-October, and also I had read a lot that it's colder and it's rainier, and so we, just resigned ourselves to, okay, we may be walking, every day in the rain, and that's fine. And so we got our little, gator covers for our shoes, and I got a new raincoat, and we even got the bigger poncho things. We were super prepared for that. Um, but it did not rain once. It was just very perfect, beautiful, sunny weather the whole time. It was chilly at night, and in the mornings. And then, by like as you were walking, you sort of lost some layers. A couple days it was almost too warm, but it was, yeah, we really, really lucked out.
yeah.
Yep.
And I tell people like, so you were on the Camino. How many days were you walking?
6 days.
6 days. Okay. And so
Hmm.
one of the things whenever people ask me about the weather,
Hmm.
some people were like, "Oh, I went in October and it was beautiful." And I'm
Yeah.
like you, wonderful person that you are, you did 6 days on the Camino, 1 October.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and it happened to be beautiful, but I'm glad you did what I recommend to other people is I say prepare for whatever.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
was just talking to a client yesterday who's looking at June, and they said, "What's the weather gonna be like?" And I said, "It could be absolutely lovely. It could be blazing hot. You could get rain." I mean, it's there's things that we do know about the weather in Spain. It will be hot in July and August. It will be cooler on the northern coast. So there are some definites, but then there's some things where it could go anyway.
Yeah.
So you really have to be prepared for anything. And then another
Yes.
thing I wanted to mention that you talked about is the shoulder season.
Mhm.
A lot of people think that the shoulder season on the Camino is May and then September, October-ish. And I always tell people those are some of the busiest times for
Mhm.
foreigners on the Camino. And that's because of the weather. It's like because
Yeah.
it's not blazing hot like July and August.
Mhm.
So I do like to just always tell people who are thinking of doing a walk on the Camino,
Mhm.
do not assume that what you think is shoulder season is actually shoulder season on the Camino. Um, so
Yeah.
something to keep in mind. How were the numbers when
Yeah.
you guys were there mid-October? By that point, I feel like it
Mhm.
usually calms down. Did you feel like there were a lot of people on the Camino or
I did feel like there was a lot of people, and you are reminding me now that I did, we were thinking, "Oh, it'll be less, crowded," and but a lot of, we were seeing and hearing that people that do the much longer Caminos,
Mhm,
they start earlier, and then they are getting to where we were, like the last 100 kilometers in
mhm,
October. So there that was kind of the case in some places. Fortunately, we didn't have a problem getting lodging. We
mhm.
also didn't stay in, the places with the big bunk beds, bunk bedrooms. But so yeah, it was not overly crowded, but there was definitely, a nice amount of people were out there.
To meet and converse with and all of
Yeah,
that.
for sure. Yeah, it wasn't like a, empty trail.
Gotcha.
I mean, of course, in some spots, but yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
I tell people, like, you're gonna get spots where, there's nobody
Mhm.
around you, and if you
Yeah.
want, and then you may get spots. I mean, if you're, starting the Camino Frances in May in
Mhm.
Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, France, there's gonna be a parade when you leave in the morning. I mean, it is
Right.
a super busy time to start that route, at that time. But you did mention, accommodations. So tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about the types of accommodations. Well, first of all,
Mhm.
did you book everything ahead?
Yes. Um, we did. We committed to a schedule because everybody works, and we um had, our flight to work around, and so we knew we wanted to do 6 days. We knew we wanted to do this route. So we had booked every night of lodging in advance. But because there's 3 of us, and we did not wanna stay in, the rooms with 15 bunk beds, that kinda thing. We just ended up, for the most part, booking, like, apartment rentals. And so it worked out well because there was 3 of us, so it was very affordable. You could rent a 2 to 3 bedroom apartment in each place, and you can see in the listings, like, I think we went through, there were Airbnb type units, but I think we went through booking.com. But
Mhm,
anyhow, the listings would tell you, if it was suitable for pilgrims, yes, we serve pilgrims, or we're right off of the Camino route. So
mhm,
so it was really helpful to kind of find those places.
mhm,
And then that also helped with our luggage transfer too, because the luggage transfer service was already aware of these kind of apartments, because I guess they're kind of popular,
mhm.
spots for pilgrims.
Yeah. And I do
Hmm.
tell people that too, like there is so most of the people I work with stay in private rooms on the Camino,
Hmm.
and have their luggage transferred.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I started my business because I felt like too many people were saying, I'd love to do the Camino, but I don't want to stay in a hostel. I'd love to do the
Right.
Camino, but I can't carry a backpack. And I
Hmm.
am here to say you don't have to do it that way. There
Yeah.
are many ways to do the Camino. Then the other thing I like that you pointed out is some people do rent apartments, and booking.com does have those listings as well. And
Mm.
the part about the luggage transfers, so some people have said to me, well, if we stay in an apartment, how are we going to get our bags with the luggage transfer service? And I've never had a problem with this. um, what for people that are listening that are like, "How does that work?" Usually the people that have the apartment live somewhere in town, first of all, but a lot of times there's a code to get into the apartment, and so a lot of
Mhm.
time the luggage transfer company has in their records what the code is, and they
Right.
literally go in and drop your bag, so it's there when you get there. Uh, on some occasions, the owners of the apartment also own the bar downstairs. And so,
Mhm.
the luggage company knows that. They just bring the bags into the bar and the owner brings them upstairs. So, this system of accommodations and luggage transfer is very popular
Mhm.
on most popular Camino routes, the Camino Frances, the Camino del Norte, the Camino Portuguese, and the Camino Inglés. Like they all have these as an option. So just for people that are listening, I wanted to let them know that is
Yeah.
certainly not a problem. Did you have any problems with your luggage transfers at all?
We actually did, and it was a little, kind of nerve-wracking in the beginning because there is no, lobby or,
Yes.
host
Yes.
at the property. So you're just assuming it's gonna show up, and it did. But we ended up going through, Correo, which was the postal service,
Hmm.
and you can book. I mean, it took a lot of phone calls and a lot of research to, um, get to this point, but, on their website, you can put the destinations where you're going and the address, and sometimes the apartment would even just pre-populate, but,
Hmm.
there was and then every morning, you would just have your bag ready for pickup by, I think it was 8 a.m.
Hmm.
And I mean, there was no leeway there. You had to have it at that time. And then when you got to your next destination, it was there. There was one time where they would not deliver. We had and we had to consult the property owner. And it was actually in Santiago, which was kind of strange, but
Hmm.
the property owner had to help us coordinate that. And I think because their unit kind of opened up to the back alley where a car couldn't come up, and I
Mhm.
don't know. We ended up getting our luggage, but it was,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little confusing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Things come up, but it's not
Hmm.
I think, after you get off if over that initial fear, I'll never forget
Hmm.
the first time I, did luggage transfer with my father on his first Camino. I had, done multiple Caminos at that point, and he was like, "We just leave it here." I'm like, "Yeah, we just leave it here." You
Yeah.
know? One of I think our sometimes we were in apartments and I was like, "Yeah, they can get in, they can get," and then he like for the first 3 days, every single time we showed up and our bag was there, he was like, "This is amazing." I'm like, "But it happened the last 2 days, and it
Yeah.
happens, Dad." They're
Yep.
transporting thousands upon thousands of bags on the Camino de Santiago
Yeah.
every
It's
day,
pretty
and I
amazing.
tell people it's incredible. It's one of those
Hmm.
other things that a lot of us talk about, like, could you imagine trying to pull this off anywhere in the United
Hmm.
States? I
Oh,
mean,
no, and
it's
it was really affordable.
yeah, yeah.
And I would say, I mean, I saw just a small percentage of people who actually were carrying their packs,
Mhm. Yeah.
walking. I think that most people did the transfer.
Yeah, and
So,
that's
yeah.
another thing, depending on what time of year you go,
Mhm.
like, in the summertime, you might see in the shoulder season, you're seeing a lot of retirees, so people that
Yeah,
have,
makes
like,
sense.
more financial means, as
Right.
opposed to in the summertime, you might see more
Mhm.
students, college students, teachers with summers off, and so, but another thing that reminds me of the very first day I got my dad on the Camino, we were staying a little off the Camino, and I get him on the Camino, and he sees a couple pilgrims go by with their huge backpacks, and he's like, "Do they not know that they don't have to carry them?" And I thought that I had never looked at it that way because when I did my first Camino, I thought you had to carry your backpack,
Oh, yeah,
and, you know,
right.
and I did, and I was in a financial situation where I was like, "I can't pay €5 a day to send my bag."
Mhm.
Uh, and so to have this completely other perspective of my father being like, "Why would you do this?" was just
Right.
so funny to me. So thanks
Yeah.
to those of you that are joining
Yeah.
us live. I'm here with Pat Kappes, one of my clients that I helped prepare her for her walk on the Camino de Santiago with two friends. And if you have any questions for her specifically, feel free to type them in. So Pat, what tell us a little bit about walking with other people. What were
Mhm.
some of the greatest things about doing it together? Some of them you've already said, and then were there any challenges or surprises that you kind of didn't expect, maybe, or did with
Yeah.
walking with other people?
Um, yeah, I was so glad to have my friends there just to experience it with them, and so someone else, um, was there to, someone that I know could, have these memories together for years to come. One of my friends, we've been friends since I was 10 years old. So, um, but anyhow, and we had kind of talked about it before because we all have different, paces. And we said, look, if we're going to be walking together, doing this trip together, let's just understand that, we'll start out together, we'll end together each day. But if stuff happens like throughout the day and we're going a different pace, or somebody wants to rest, or, somebody wants to charge ahead, whatever, so we had kind of had that set that expectation in the beginning. And it was pretty much how it worked out. We ended up walking together most of the time. And it was great. It was nice. I'd say the only difference is if you're going by yourself, or, you're more likely to talk with other, meet new pilgrims or other travelers and have a chance. And we did that a little bit. I met some people, from a couple different countries, which was nice. And then when we did separate on a couple different dates, um, that came more easily. But yeah, I think there was definitely like, it was a great experience. But maybe traveling with people, you're less likely to, talk with other folks. And that
Mhm.
might be fine for some folks, or, it's just something to consider.
Yeah, it is a good consideration because having done Caminos both on my own and with other people,
Hmm.
I noticed the same thing, and also on my own who I would start a conversation with.
Hmm.
Depended on. I mean, if there was a group of three women and they were animatedly chatting and da da da, I might not interrupt them or say hello.
Mm,
I might just wish them a
yeah.
buen camino and move on, figuring they're in
Hmm.
world. So yeah, there are some differences on that, but I some of us also have no problem just interrupting people and
Yeah.
saying, "Where are you guys from?" Especially if I hear people speaking English
Oh,
or one of
yeah.
the other languages that I speak. So yeah.
Yeah, and then also because we did stay in these apartments, we were not really engaging with other people. There was one town that we stayed in, more of like a traditional pension type inn,
Mhm,
and we were able to like have breakfast at the community table, and which I really love that
mhm.
experience. So I would try to do that in the future as much as possible.
Yeah, I was working with some clients just the other day, and we're just starting the whole accommodation planning process. And that was one of my questions: is do you want to stay in private
Hmm.
apartments, or are you looking more for pensions, hotels, things like that? And that is now one of the pros and cons that
Hmm.
I go over with apartments is of in in a shared accommodation, and I don't mean sharing your room, I mean that as
Yeah.
well, but I just mean in something like a hotel or pension where there's multiple people staying in multiple rooms, you are
Hmm.
more likely potentially to run into people, but it
Yeah.
it does depend, because I've
Hmm.
also stayed in accommodations where there's, 10 rooms, but I never saw the other pilgrims. I saw their bags there, I heard them maybe come in or
Yeah.
something, and
Right.
they were gone before I even got up in the morning.
Hmm.
But then other times, yeah, we would run into the same people at breakfast, for example, or something like that.
Mm.
Um, and to the end with going with other people, I just want to let listeners know it was my ninth newsletter that I ever posted on Substack was called "Don't Do the Camino with Someone Just Because You Love Them," and and I send it out to anyone who contacts me and says, "Oh, I'm going to go with some other people." This is one of the first things I do is I send them this because it has exactly what you did, Pat,
Mm.
the questions you should discuss with your travel partners
Mm.
before you go so
Yeah.
everyone's on the same page. I've definitely, met people on the Camino where the husband is 3 days ahead or the wife is 3 days ahead because they realize this is not fun
That's
doing with
funny.
you in this moment. So
Mhm.
you do your thing, I'll do mine. Or that they would, you know, one would want to start early in the morning, the other one, and they just meet in wherever they were staying that night.
Mhm.
But I also know of two young women in particular whose friendship did not make it through the
Oh,
Camino,
that's rough.
because they didn't have this discussion. The one
Mhm.
thought that they would be walking, that they would be not only walking together, but spending every moment together. And
Mm,
the other one was like, "That's not what I had pictured." I thought we'd have each other to lean on, kind of thing. But if, so, and they didn't discuss it ahead of time. And if
yeah.
you don't, if you're in that moment of like, I
Mhm.
thought this, I thought that, it's not going to work as well as if, sitting at home
Yeah,
talking on the
for
phone with
sure.
about a trip. It's going to be a better experience if you know ahead of time. Um,
Agreed.
uh, so I'm just looking for my other questions, and I'm realizing that the document did not print the way that I wanted it to print, but that's okay. Um, so tell us, what was it like each day? Like, what kind of take us through? Like, what's your routine on the Camino? Because for so many people, they have said. I tell people I like to stop walking by Spanish lunchtime so I can eat a good meal. And people are like, so if you stop walking that early in the rest in the day, what do you do? And I say to people, you can, there's lots of options. You got to know yourself. But what was your routine like daily on the
Yeah.
Camino?
So, we were kind of leisurely about things. We, you'd wake up in the morning and you'd look out the window and you'd see all these pilgrims heading out, and it's still dark. That was not us. We were a little bit more leisurely about our mornings. But you did have to have your bags, so you had to be ready by 8 a.m., I believe. And
Mhm,
so we would do that and have our bags ready. But then we'd like get a coffee, maybe a little bite, and start walking after that. And then we would stop along the route and have a pretty decent sized lunch. And that was no matter where we were, like whatever looked good, or, I followed a couple of the apps pretty closely to see, the distance between like stopping points along the way.
mhm,
Um, and if it was one that had a lot of food options, we would probably stop and enjoy ourselves, and then we would finish the Camino and get to where we were. So we didn't have a goal of like getting to our next stop, before the end of lunch service.
mhm.
So we ended up kind of walking a little bit later, but it was still plenty
Yeah.
light out.
Mhm,
And then when we would get to the next destination, a lot of times, like, they weren't like you mentioned, they're not serving food, until 8. But what was kind of funny, we discovered after a couple towns that, there's still, lots of, like, tables, outside in front of the cafes and in the, kind of central plazas, and lots of people, out. And so we just would sit down and get a drink and, you know, um, look for the food menu, and they're like, "No, we don't serve food, not until 8 o'clock, and we can bring you a bowl of nuts or potato chips, but that is it."
mhm,
So that is for real. People do
yeah,
not serve food, during that window. But,
mhm,
it was never really an issue because we had our bigger meals earlier,
mhm.
at one of the places along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, Spanish lunchtime is traditionally you sit down between 1:30 and 3:30.
Mhm.
And they have what's called a menu del dia, and they also have a regular menu where you just pick what you want. The menu del dia is a few courses, it's one price. One of the things, having now been back in the US for a few months, that I miss about Spain is that if the menu del dia is 15 euros, they're going to bring your bill and it's going to be 15 euros. Taxes included. You can leave a tip if you want. It's not expected. I was told if it's, if they're, lovely or whatever. Yeah, I mean, feel free to leave €1 per person for a bigger meal. For coffee, we would just round up, or leave, 50 cents, €1 for a couple of us or whatever. But so Spanish lunch has been traditionally the bigger meal.
Mhm.
Sometimes in some places the school's closed, so the kids can go home for lunch.
Hmm.
And or so it's a good thing to take advantage of. When you guys were eating, were you doing menu del dia or were you eating off a regular menu, or do you recall?
Um, I think for the most part, it was regular menu.
Menu.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
There were a couple places that, maybe it was more for dinner, in, like, the smaller towns. They were like, "You can have this or you can have this." And we would, go with that, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. And
Mhm,
there are and to your point, 8 o'clock is the earliest most places are gonna open for, dinner. I should say along the Camino Frances,
mhm.
because it's so popular these days, there are some places that will open earlier, like and by earlier, I mean maybe 7, um, for, the Menu del Peregrino, which is a multi-course menu, but for pilgrims, and
Hmm.
part of the reason it's called that is because there's no Spaniard that's eating at that hour, so
Oh,
and
yeah.
the only people who are eating at that hour are going to be
Mhm,
pilgrims, or maybe Spanish pilgrims if because they're walking and they're hungry. But yeah, good that you guys did that because you are absolutely right. Like once lunch service is over,
mhm.
most of the kitchens are closed.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can go into a place and they'll have like some sandwiches, or sometimes I would, yeah, like you, I'd ask if they have any food, and
Right?
they'd be like, "No, kitchen's
No.
closed." Feel like my mother would say that when I was a kid. Nope, kitchen's closed. You can't.
Right.
So it is. Thank you for pointing that out. That it is
Yeah.
indeed a real thing. You mentioned some apps. Can you tell us some of the apps that you used that you liked? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was, Buen Camino
Buen
was one
Camino.
of
Yep.
them.
Hmm.
And then another one that I believe you had recommended, what's the one of the main
Why?
ones that you're
Maybe Wise Pilgrim?
I did look at that, but there was another one that showed, like, the each day's kind of elevation and
Grande?
distant. Yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So,
Grande day.
I looked at all of them. There was one that I mean, each day we would kind of, um, see what the walk was and where the towns were,
Yep.
and, kind of map out, like, where we might wanna stop or whatnot. So it was definitely, like, using both of them.
Yes, indeed. They
Yeah.
they both have
Yeah.
their things that I like about them, and
Mhm.
for those of you that miss that are wanting to know about these, Gronze is Gronze, and it is
Mhm.
a website. They do have it available in English now, and it's great for planning your caminos as well.
Mhm.
It tells you how many kilometers between these towns. It gives you the elevation profile, which is
Yeah.
critical.
That was very
If
helpful.
Yes. Because I have so many people. I think that was one of the things we did on our call together, Pat, is I showed you the elevation profiles
Yep.
for
Mhm.
Sarria to Santiago versus for Chubut
Yeah.
to Santiago,
Right.
because so many people are like, "Oh, yeah, 10 miles a day, that's fine," and I'm like, "Okay,
Mhm.
but not if it's, like, uphill most of the day. That's a
Right.
very different 10 miles."
Yeah.
So, yeah. Tell us a little bit about how your body held up doing the Camino.
Speaking of, no, and the Camino Portuguese is not level by any means,
No.
there's
No.
definitely some pretty steep days. But it was, you know, I think you had mentioned this. You're like, people think, oh, I can do this, but think about doing it several days in a row is where it I think kind of impacts you, or
Mhm.
it did me. But the walking part was great. Like I didn't really train. I just do, moderate hiking at home and whatnot. But and that was all fine. I did get a new pair of shoes, and I did not practice or train with like different socks. And I think I told you, we'd planned for really cold weather. So I was kind of winging it on the trip, and I ended up getting some pretty bad blisters on one foot,
Mm.
maybe like the fourth day. And that interfered with one of my walks. But yeah, and then that it really only kind of held me back for like one day.
Okay. And what
Yep.
kind of treatment did you do or apply, or
Oh,
and
I
I
went
should
to,
qualify, neither of us are medical professionals.
yeah, yeah,
And everybody has their ways that they do this, so I just like to
uh-huh.
get your 2 cents.
Well, it's funny because I wish I could tell you a name of an anointment that this woman gave me because it, like, was a miracle cure, and it was just another pilgrim who shared it with me because she had an issue, like, the week prior, and, it really helped, and then when I wanted to use it again the next day, I mean, they were, like, overnight, kind of almost fix. So I kept
Amazing.
looking in all the pharmacies to get that, and since I didn't know the name and I just described it, I was never able to. Um, but anyhow, those Band-Aids with they have a little extra padding in them or something. It's like
Mm,
specifically for blisters. Those were
yeah.
super helpful. And every town pretty much is selling, this kind of stuff in their little pharmacies. But
Mhm.
yeah, on the one day that it did mess me up, I started in the morning and then I was like, nope, this isn't going to be good. So I turned around and walked back to the town and to catch a bus. But it didn't come till later. So I had a lot of time to explore the town. And then there were other people doing the same exact thing. And so, you kind of met other travelers from other places. And then when I got to the next town, it was, I think, maybe Sunday, and they had tons of markets and things going on. So I ended up walking the same amount of time I would have if I had done the route that day. But it was different because I got to explore these two different towns that I would not have had time to. So it worked out pretty well.
Mhm. I think
Uh,
that's something on the Camino routes. I'm always thinking like, I want to come back and see this town otherwise when I
yeah,
haven't just walked, 10 or 12 miles and
right, exactly.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, or take a
Mhm.
rest day. Some people do take rest days in these towns. And
Mhm.
I know people that do look up when are the market days in the various
Mm.
towns along
Mhm.
their Camino route so they can time those because usually if you're in a town, those markets 9 o'clock is early in Spain to for a market to start. They
Mhm.
may be there at 9, but, and usually pilgrims are leaving long before that, so you kinda
Mhm.
meet them, and then they're usually done by lunchtime, which is like one
Mm.
o'clock, which is the time
Mhm.
some pilgrims are getting into town, so I remember, um, especially on my first Camino, we were like, "Man, all these towns are just, like, closed up," and it was because we were always arriving
Oh,
at lunchtime, and everybody was
right.
eating lunch, or we were
Mhm.
in towns that were small and they were out,
Mm.
a ways away from bigger towns for us who are walking, but not if you were driving. And so a lot of the people
Mhm.
worked in big towns, and in the evenings you would start to
Oh,
see,
yeah.
people kind of coming out of their shells here. Um,
Yeah.
so Pat, we're almost finished here. This has
Mm.
been wonderful. Do you have anything in particular, anything else that you want to make sure that you tell people about or add or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely wanna do more Caminos, and I think, maybe like you just said, planning a rest day in between so you can actually have time to explore,
Mhm,
someplace.
mhm.
But I would also say for any of your viewers that I would have 100% booked a couple more calls with you. I had our
I didn't
challenge
pay
with
her for that.
ah, well, I mean, there's like so many resources online, and I thought, oh, I've backpacked across Europe. This should be no problem. And it was confusing. It really is its own, set of challenges, unique challenges. And so, talking with you really helped me. Um, but then because it was three of us and we were all working, we were all cramming to get our stuff ready to be able to take off time from work, it just I wish that I had been a little bit more intentional about some of the things because we did end up, wasting some time while we were on our trip doing some planning things, and research that we could have done before.
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, I would say anybody considering a Camino, just go and just do it. But make sure you have a really open and flexible mind because, um, you know, who knows what to expect each day.
Mhm. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
I have another client who said, the community he said, "Every day is like the first inning." Like, you don't know the team, you don't know what you're gonna face,
Right.
it's like, there are some things
Yeah.
that are the same, you keep walking, that's the same. Um,
Right. Right.
but other than that, like, who knows what's gonna happen. So,
Yeah.
um,
100%.
Pat, I just wanna thank you so much for joining me and sharing your Camino experiences and stories here with us and with our listeners, and I'm sure there's there's many people that will get to benefit from things that you have shared today. And
Yeah.
for anyone else who's watching or listening, you can get Camino information every Sunday into your inbox if you go to inspiration.thecaminocalls.com. And my website is thecaminocalls.com. And I try and do some sort of live thing every Wednesday. And if any of you are watching and you're like, I've done the Camino, I want to be a guest, feel free to get in touch and I would love to have you. So thanks so much once again, Pat. This was
Yeah,
wonderful.
thank you. Thanks so
All
much.
right. Buen
Bye-bye.
Camino. Bye.